Hey y'all, this is Brian Jackson, one half the duo of Gil Scott-Heron and Brian Jackson, and you're watching Joe Kelley on Musicians Reveal.
Welcome to Musicians Reveal. I'm Joe Kelley. I'm extremely excited because we have a revolutionary, talented musician, producer, songwriter. He was a co-writer and partner in music with Gil Scott-Heron. They made some incredible albums. He went on to do great studio work with lots of talented musicians and his own solo career. Originally from New York, now making home across the pond in France. We can finally say Brian Jackson is in the house. How you doing, Brian?
I'm doing good, Joe. Thanks for having
Yeah,
me.
yeah. So we were talking off air not too long ago. You made the trek to move to France. How you
Yeah,
enjoying it and the difference from over here?
I think I was about maybe 12, 11 or 12, and my mom sent me to my cousin's place. It's a place that they in Long Island, somewhere in Long Island, Southampton, I think it was,
Oh,
or
okay, yeah.
Northampton, one of those two. I don't know which one. It was a Hampton. One of those Hamptons, probably the
It
one
was
that
expensive.
that wasn't expensive. It was the one that
Oh,
wasn't
okay.
expensive.
Oh,
So I
okay,
ended up
okay,
in Southampton because he had built his own house and he had
okay.
some chickens in the back, and we had fresh eggs. And I stayed there for about a week. And on the train, I came back, and my mom met me at Penn Station. And as soon as the doors opened up, I just burst into tears. And she said, "What's the matter?" And I said, "I don't want to leave," you know.
Mhm.
And she called up. She said, "Well, get off the train for a second." So she called up my cousins, and she said, "Is it okay? You think it's possible that he can just come back?" And they said, "Sure." So I was like the happiest kid, man.
Ah,
And I think that was when I realized that I was not a city boy.
oh,
And
okay.
ever since then, I would go on trips and different countries and different places. When I would come back, and I remember standing on the train and just being mad, just being upset, that I was back.
Right, right.
So I think that's when I first started realizing that maybe New York wasn't the place, for me to actually hang my hat for the rest of my life. Um, Even though I lived in New York for a long time, man, it was just it was in the cards, and I really enjoy the countryside, which I'm very very deep in right now.
Okay.
It's cool. It's cool, man. I'm enjoying it.
So how long does it take you to get into the major cities in France?
About an hour. So it's an hour
Oh, okay,
drive
that's
to
not bad.
Toulouse,
Okay.
which is, I think the third or fifth largest city or something like that. And so, there's the stuff there, and actually the town we live in also,
Okay.
it's not totally remote. So
Oh,
we're
okay.
okay. We're good.
Yeah, and we can do business like this, and I'm sure you've recorded with other musicians remotely, right?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I got my setup and everything. So
Yeah. Yeah,
we're
you got
good.
the setup in the back there. It looked like I mean, you got your keys and I saw a little drum set too, right?
Oh yeah, this is my little sonar drum set up here. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Hey, you can do demos and recordings there, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, the last couple of albums, I've basically done my a lot of my vocals here at the place.
Right.
Yeah,
And this is Brian Jackson. That was the latest studio, right?
that was the it. Well, it was until a couple of weeks ago when
Oh, okay.
our new album came out on the Sesc label in Brazil
Okay.
called "Of Corners and Bridges," and it's a tribute to Milton Nascimento. So
Okay.
yeah, up until recently, it was the last album, and then there's another one coming this fall, another BBE album.
Wow. So let's talk about the current album where people can get the music. What's the best spot?
Sadly, it's not out on vinyl. It's
Okay.
only You can only get it on on all the streaming platforms. We're trying to see if we can make that happen.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, this is Brian Jackson was released in 2022,
Mhm.
and we've had some good responses from that. So we picked up on on that, got in touch with Masters at Work, Louis Vega and
Oh, wow.
Kenny Dope, and they decided that they would like to produce an album with me, and that's exactly what we did. So we've got a lot of heavyweight artists on there, people who I admire, like Moody Man and Jay Ivy,
Mhm.
Rasan Patterson.
Oh, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah,
He's a Jersey guy, right?
yes, he is.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
he is. I found that. I found that out. Yeah, Axel Tosca, the great pianist.
Mhm.
Um, and so many others. I even got a couple of my midnight band, one of my midnight band ex members, but still friend,
Yeah.
Carl Cornwell,
Okay.
to record on it. And yeah, it's just full of people. Luis Quintero, Lisa Fisher, and
Oh,
Cindy
yeah.
Mizell.
I was
Uh,
watching Lisa
Chuck
Fisher.
Clark.
They were streaming. She was in New York singing. It looked like a trio
Yeah, yeah, she's
recently. Yeah.
just a man. She's just fantastic. There isn't anything that she can't do.
Yeah. So
So,
we'll, for our viewers and listeners, because this will be on YouTube and also all the Spotify, all the big outlets, we'll have the links to your website,
oh, thanks.
brianjackson.com, right?
Yes, dot net.
.net. Okay.
Yeah, it's a guy
brianjackson.net.
that took dot com about 25 years ago,
Ah,
and if I
yeah.
ever see him, we're gonna have some
Yeah.
words.
I had my original show was Upper Room with Joe Kelley, and I let the site lapse for 1 month.
Mm,
Somebody snapped it up,
mm,
and if I wanna get it back, I gotta pay like $5,000.
exactly,
So I
exactly.
switched the name of the show, Musicians Reveal, which makes more sense because people know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah,
true.
yeah. So we'll have the links also to, the recent records as well, if they wanna download the MP3s as well.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
appreciate that.
So we know you're from New York originally. Bed-Stuy, you grew up?
Yeah, more or
Yeah.
less. I mean, I was born in Bed-Stuy, and when I was about 5, my mom and I moved to Crown Heights,
Oh, okay.
and I spent the time up until I went to Lincoln University
Mm.
there in Crown Heights. Yeah.
Now an interesting story was you getting into music and the lessons, paying for the lessons, and when the money ran out, you had a mentor who kinda gave you a a scholarship to learn more, right? Tell us about that story and that special lady.
Yeah, that's right. Excuse me. Her name was just start out by saying that her name was Hepzibah Ross,
Okay.
and I guess that's a biblical name. I guess that's from the Bible. Hepzibah, Hepzibah,
Okay.
and she was a fantastic pianist. She had graduated from Spelman College in Georgia,
Mhm.
and she was classically trained. And when I was, I think it was I was 5 because my parents, they listened to jazz all the time.
Okay.
So I grew up listening to Max Roach and Clifford Brown and Ella Fitzgerald and Miles and Red Garner and just like Ahmad Jamal and all of these guys. And so I just was full of music, and it animated me, and I wanted to be the animator
Mhm.
myself.
Ah,
I wanted to
right.
be able to do that for myself. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so I started begging my mom when I was 5, and that also ironically had to be around the same time that my parents broke up.
Okay.
And my dad being such a huge jazz fan, in retrospect, I think, maybe it was a way also for us to, that in my child mind and my little kid mind, thinking that maybe we might be able to establish another kind of connection,
Right.
but for whatever reason, I wanted to play. I wanted to play drums,
Right.
and because of Max Roach. And my mom,
Ah,
we
wow.
lived in a small apartment, and my mom was like, I don't think so. you know.
Yeah.
So next was maybe trumpet, Clifford Brown, Miles Davis, still too loud. So we ended up on the piano, but the only problem was we didn't have a piano. So it
Ah,
took a while.
okay.
But
Yeah.
2 years later, I started taking lessons with Mrs. Ross, who happened to be my mother's teacher,
Oh,
even though
okay.
she didn't play professionally, but she had studied piano when she was younger. And she was pretty good. She was actually
Yeah.
pretty good at it. She could read and
Yeah.
all of that stuff. But I took my first lesson with well, we called her Aunt Happy, because she was
Okay.
like a family. She was a friend of the family,
Right.
and everybody called her Happy. And I took my first lesson with her. She showed me the scale from 1 to 5, C, D, E, F, G, and so she said, "Well, practice that when you get home, and you come back next week." And I'm very happy. I'm elated, and I'm skipping out the door. And as I get to the to the bottom of the steps, I turned around and I said, "But I don't have a piano." And
Ah,
she said, "Wait here." So she goes in the house, disappears for a minute, and she comes back and she hands me this piece of cardboard,
okay.
you know, and I open it up, and it's a drawing of a keyboard about 2 octaves.
Mhm.
She said, "This will get you started." And so I was still happy, I've skipped
Yeah.
away, and you
And you
know,
were on.
I
Yeah.
was still happy, and I just practiced on that little cardboard keyboard religiously. And maybe after a few months, I think one day I came home from school,
Mhm.
and my grandmother, my mom was at work, and my grandmother said, "Wait right here." And
Oh,
so she said, "Close your eyes." I'm like, "Okay, what is this?" I go in, and there's this spinet piano just sitting there in the living room,
wow.
and so that was the beginning. Um, about I was really doing well. I was really enjoying playing music, even though I wasn't playing jazz, which is
Mm,
what I wanted to play. But back then they told everybody, if you want to learn to play jazz, you got to learn to play classical European music. You got to learn your Beethoven and your Brahms and your Bach and this, that, and the other. So whatever it took, I was down, and I didn't hate any of that.
right.
I was familiar with that too. My parents used to listen to that too. So I was happy to do it. Um, they didn't have jazz lessons per se back then, for kids.
Mhm.
So I did what I had to do, um, and I was progressing pretty well. And then one day, my mom said, "Well, we might have to start. We might have to stop for a while, because I don't think I'm not going to be able you know, to pay for it."
Right.
For a while. Yeah, I mean, you can start again, but maybe you'll, just keep practicing, until then. We went into the school, the next her house, the next lesson, and I was just so dejected, thinking this might be my last lesson, you
Wow.
know, and I was just so, I was just so sad and unhappy. Said
Mhm.
to me, she said, "Well, what's the matter?" And I said, "Well, Mom just told me that I might have to take a pause on the music lessons." And she said, "Why?" And I told her. She talked to my mom, and she came. After a few minutes, she came back in and she said, "Look," she said, "you're making tremendous progress. Um, you know, you're one of my best students, and I really want to see you, succeed at this."
Mhm.
And she said, "So I'm placing you on scholarship
Oh,
um, indefinitely. As long as you keep working and keep progressing, and as long as you enjoy what you're doing, you have a free pass.
wow. She saw something in you that she wanted to facilitate even to greater heights, I guess.
I guess so. Well, it
Yeah.
helped. It definitely helped.
Yeah. So growing up, you know, as a young student like that, and my question is the level to progress to I'm sure you were looking at colleges, music colleges, specifically. Was that the case?
No,
Oh,
um,
okay.
what Aunt Happy told me though, she said, always remember that you have something that can help you get by. And
Mhm.
she said, so when you're in college, you know, you have something that you can make some money with. It'll help you get through college. And I thought, okay, but I didn't at the time. I didn't think I would be a musician, per
Oh,
se. I
okay.
mean, I had no idea how to even go about it. Um, it seemed scary
Uh-huh.
and kind of uncertain. And I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I mean, I knew I wanted to play music, but I didn't know how I was going to be able to survive doing music. But
Yeah. What was the decision to go to Lincoln University out in PA?
well, again, it was the arts because Lincoln. I was also in love with poetry. I did spend a lot of time writing poetry. When I wasn't playing music, I was writing poetry, and one of my biggest heroes was Langston Hughes.
Mm.
And turns out that Langston Hughes went to Lincoln University,
Oh, okay.
and I thought, okay, um, there was a lot of Afrocentric activity going on. It was a time when young Black people were identifying, re-identifying with their roots, and just
Mhm.
finding out things about it, about Africa, and about our culture, our African heritage that none of us really had been taught or knew too much about. And so this was a period where a lot of us were just discovering some of the older, um, African American artists, and just finding out so much about them. Uh, the writings of W.E.B. Du Bois, Count T. Cullen, um, just like all of the different artists that and some of the more contemporary ones like Claude McKay, for instance. Um, we just kind of were really discovering a lot of the art that was out there. And Langston Hughes was one of my heroes, particularly for a poem that he did called "A Dream Deferred."
Okay.
I
Well,
think it's about maybe 6 lines, but it's one of the most powerful poems I've ever heard.
well, what struck you about that poem particularly?
I think it was the economy of it,
Oh,
you know.
okay. Yeah.
Um, and I'm pulling it up now,
Okay.
and I'll just read it to you because it's probably the most. It's called "Montage of a Dream Deferred,"
Okay.
and it goes, "What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load, or does it explode?" And that to me was probably the most poignant poem that I had ever seen. Um, the economy of it,
Yeah,
and
just like and I'm thinking to myself, spoken word had a really big boom later on with the hip hop crew and stuff like that. You were ahead of your time. You were just forging into that before that
oh man,
got
there
in the
was so
spot.
much from us to draw from. Gwendolyn
Yeah.
Brooks and Hakeem Adibuti and of course Amiri Baraka. There was so much, and I mean the beat poets. I mean the poetry was alive in the '60s and the
Mhm.
'70s. You couldn't be in New York without knowing about what was happening on the poetry scene, the cafes. So yeah, it was a big part of my life.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about those early days of music in New York because I lived a semester at NYU,
Ooh,
uh, in
good
the Village
place.
at 1982, and I
Ooh,
came back to
yeah.
Connecticut for a girl I was dating, which, we're not together anymore, but, NYU in later years, we were an hour from New York City, we'd go down Bleecker Street and all the spots down there. What
Yeah.
was the live music scene, back when you were able
Oh
to go to
man, it was
clubs?
incredible. No, it
Mhm.
was incredible. The top of the gate, the Village Gate, the Vanguard, Blue Note. There was just so much activity going on around there. Um, Everything was always alive. Um, and I forget what they used to call the Poisson Rouge, but it was I was a club. It was right around the corner from the Blue Note.
Okay.
And no, man, it was you could easily hear. music. In fact, in Brooklyn, there was the East,
Oh, okay.
which was on 10 Claver Place, right there in the heart of Bedford-Stuyvesant.
Mhm.
A lot of people used to come through there. Pharoah Sanders, McCoy Tyner,
Wow.
yeah, Harry Whitaker,
Mhm.
Roy Ayers. You could
Yeah.
just go there, and that was for free.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, and it wasn't too far from me. So yeah, I would end up busting on down there, man, from straight from high school, and kind of earn my way, or trying to make myself a part of to help support the club. I would
Mhm.
go down there and arrange tables and clean up and stuff. We all did, just so we could just to be able to hang around that energy.
Yeah, quickly before I forget, talking about Max Roach, I was only able to see him in person once. It was up at the Montreal Jazz Festival up in Canada. It was a duo, Max Roach and Mal Waldron,
Whew,
and yeah,
two
that was
heavy.
something. I didn't know as much about Mal, but I later had his daughter in the studio to
Ah,
perform.
yeah,
Mala,
Mala. Yeah,
yeah, Mala, she's really nice.
yeah.
Yeah, but it's funny. I'll tell you a really brief. I guess the time, you know, Mal Waldron was on stage and he was smoking, in between all the songs, and it got to a point he looked at his watch, and I think someone came on stage and says, "No, you got a few more minutes to go." He didn't look
Oh,
too happy, but it was great. Max was so subtle on the brushes during a concert. Yeah.
yeah. True
So
masters. True
yeah.
masters. I was,
Now we got to get. Oh no, I cut you off. Sorry.
no, no, it's okay. No, I'm saying I was just fortunate to meet, a few of those masters, like Max and um, oh man, Mingus. Mingus,
Yeah.
I played in Woodstock once, and Mingus was in the audience, and after
Wow.
the show, he came up to me and said, "Yeah, hey, I think you have something there, young man." These kind of things. So I mean, it's that's something you'll never forget. You can never forget. And it was extremely encouraging to me. So I
Yeah.
try to do the same thing with younger
Yeah.
artists as well.
Yeah. That's good. You're passing on the lessons you learned and what not to
That is the
do and
lesson.
stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that is the lesson. Well,
Yeah.
I don't
That's
know
right.
about what not to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's well documented. Some of those artists, the
Yeah,
short
definitely, for
lives.
sure, for
Yeah.
sure, for
Yeah.
sure.
Getting back to those college days, um, let's talk about your first introduction to your buddy Gil Scott-Heron. You were at the same school, and what was that like?
Same school for maybe some of the same reasons. Langston Hughes was definitely one of those reasons uh, that Gil also stated. That he wanted to go to Lincoln University, and it was also Oscar Brown Jr. Oscar Brown Jr. went to Lincoln
Ah,
University as well.
okay,
Thurgood Marshall attended there for a brief period of time. Yeah, Kwame Nkrumah as well. So there were many, um, luminaries uh, in the African American, the Pan African experience, and so it seemed like a good place for someone who was immersed in that, and to go. And it just so
mhm,
happened that I was expecting something quite different when I went to Lincoln University. I was expecting kind of a radical, or at least a different kind of curriculum. you
okay,
know. But when I got there, I realized that the curriculum was the same as it would have been in any other college or university, which was kind of depressing to me, because I just finished my junior and senior year protesting for, like, for instance, one single Black History course in my school in Brooklyn, in
mhm,
Erasmus Hall, which we were able to procure.
mhm.
But I was thinking, okay, I'm on Easy Street now. No more protesting. I
Yeah,
go to Lincoln University and I'll just take some Black History course. Except there wasn't any. And worse yet, in the most of the curriculum didn't include. I mean, I wasn't. I didn't expect them to exclude the rest of of the history of anything.
right.
Of history of literature or music or art. I didn't expect them to exclude any aspect of it, no matter where it came from. But what I did expect was for African contributions to be included,
Mm.
you know, to be among those things that were discussed, and it didn't happen. And so I was very, I was disillusioned, maybe a little bit too vocally, and so I am. Just in the end, I ended up getting kicked out. But during the process of being kicked out, I went through a big depression. I stopped going to class, and I was always in the music room.
Okay.
And one of those days that I was writing and playing in one of the music rooms, uh, young man, knocked on the door and he came in, and he asked me to be a part of the talent show because he said, you sound pretty good. You sound pretty good, and I thought maybe you could play this song that I was interested in doing for the talent show. And I said, what is it? And he said, well, it's God Bless the Child. I'm like, yeah, I mean, I could probably, and he
Yeah.
said, no, but the thing is, it's the blood, sweat, and tears version.
Oh,
And I
okay.
was like, wow, okay, that's even better because I really took the time to learn that one. So because I like the chord, I like the chord progressions, what they put in it. And so I knew it. And so we ran over it a couple of times and we're good to go. So I said, oh, so you getting ready to just sing one song at the talent show? And he says, no, I'm singing another song. It's by this guy. Um, when a kid at school wrote it for me. I was like, a kid at school that wrote you a song? Who is it? So he introduces me to the kid at school who wrote him this song, and it was Gil.
Ah, okay.
And Gil played me the song, and it blew me away. I mean, the lyrics, just like completely took me off guard, and I thought, so listen, I got all these songs. I told you I was writing poetry. I could write poetry,
Yeah.
but lyrics was another kind of thing for me, and it took
Okay.
me forever. And I thought, okay, I got all these songs I want to put lyrics to. Maybe this guy will do it. So I so I asked him, you think if you have any time, maybe you want to, try to write some lyrics for this song. And I played him a song, and he said, play it again. So I played it. No, I played it once, and he said, so what were you trying to say with that song? What was the message, that you were trying to get across, or what does the song say to you?
Hmm.
And I told him, I said, it's kind of like raise my glass to the people whose shoulders we stand upon, you know, and freedom fighters, and just everything, like the whole movement, towards justice, and freedom. And he said, okay, we'll play it again. So I played it again, and he asked me to play it one more time. And by the time I played it the third time, he had already finished it,
Wow.
and he was standing in the corner with this young man who introduced us by the name of Victor Brown.
Okay.
Um, and then he said, okay, here it is, so what do you think? And so I played it, and he had kind of taught Victor the melody, and it was beautiful. It was a song called Toast to the People, and it ended up being on our album, first artist album, called Midnight Band, First Minute of a New Day.
Yeah. What a way to start, right?
Yeah, what a way to
Yeah.
start.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Did Gil have that distinctive voice back then vocally, or was that just through wear and tear?
No, he actually he came out sounding like that.
Oh, okay.
I think he sounded like that when he was 5.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty cool. Now you're both established on the keys and yourself as a flautist as well. How did you manage the both of you to blend, especially on keys,
Yeah.
and both creative minds with words, and how did you that work together, working and writing songs together?
Well, I mean, it was never really too much of a problem. We all knew what our strengths were, and we kind of made space for the other.
Okay.
Um, Most of the time, if he had some chord changes, I would sit down, like kind of like get up, get
Yeah.
up, and I would sit down and I'd kind of flesh it out, and um, There were some songs though that didn't need anything, like The Bottle, for instance. That was a
Right.
song that didn't really need anything, or Johannesburg. And so those are the ones he would play. And likewise, um, sometimes a song that I wrote, lyrics to didn't really need very much, if anything. Like It's Your World, for instance, or Must Be Something, or different songs like that. That so we just knew that if something worked, like Gil always used to say, if it ain't broke, don't break
Okay.
it.
Yeah.
So
Right.
so um that was pretty much our working philosophy. But the music, regardless, the music always came first.
Now, after that initial meeting and getting into the world of recording music and record contracts and everything like that,
Yeah.
when did you start getting the co-billing and what went into that as far as you guys are partners, Gil Scott-Heron and Brian Jackson?
Right. Well, we saw ourselves mostly as songwriters. So we took the songwriting thing really, really seriously. And we kind of, I don't know, is I mean, I think probably if I had it to do over again, I think it would have probably been more fair for us to just split it, right down the middle, all of the songs, regardless of our
Right.
contribution, because regardless, we both had like something to do with all of those songs.
Right.
Um, and I see it more. I see it kind of like a McCartney Lennon kind of thing. Where it's just like, yeah, we wrote everything.
Yeah.
Whatever.
That's
Because
it. They both
rather than nitpick, I wrote that word, or it didn't make sense. But in my mind, in my kid's mind,
right.
um, and maybe not just my kid's mind, but I felt that that even though he was a great poet, I felt that he needed some more credibility as a musician, as a writer of music. And so we just kind of I a lot of times I wouldn't, I just kind of would defer to the fact. I would just say, well, he wrote the chords, so yeah, okay, you know what I mean. um and so that then I would just say, okay, he wrote it.
Mm.
But in retrospect, when I look at it, I think to myself, well, I mean, yeah, he wrote the chords, but by the time we recorded it, it was like a completely different song. And
Right.
but it is what it is. It is what it is. The
Yeah.
music always came first, and regardless, and so we went with that. We went with that. But
I mean,
yeah, I
yeah.
started getting Bob Thiel on the recording of the first three albums.
Mhm.
Wasn't interested um, in putting us on the. He didn't speak to me about doing that album. He
Okay.
wanted Gil to do poetry.
Okay.
And Gil came along after he signed the contract, and he said, "Well, me and my guy over here, we do a lot of we do music together, and we'd like to do
Mhm.
some of that music." And he said, "Well, I'll play some of it." And we went in and we played some of the songs, and he said, "Oh, okay, all right." So we got a chance to record um, "Pieces of a Man" and "Free Will" on that dime.
Right.
You know what I mean? But after that, we started looking at the publishing idea, and Bob didn't really want to give up any of that publishing, so we thought, oh, well, I guess we need to kind of go on our own, because all the old guys were telling us, get your publishing, no matter what, you get your
Yeah. Right.
publishing. So so we did our own album,
Yeah.
and that was called Winter in America, and of course we billed ourselves as a
Yeah.
duo. Um,
Okay.
that was the begin. That was the beginning.
And Ron Carter joined you guys, right?
Ron Carter played on the first album, on Pieces of a Man, as well as Hubert Laws and Bernard Purdy.
Oh, wow.
Incredible. I mean, I always thank them whenever I see them. I always thank them. I say, thank you for giving us credibility.
Mm.
Because no matter how good our songs were, I don't think anybody would have paid half the attention they did if you guys hadn't been playing on it.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned like the greats like that. Doing radio, I used to send my playlist to artists, and I sent one to like lesser known independent artist and said, I love you playing my music, but maybe mix in a well known artist once in a while to, you know, people be like, wow,
Yeah,
my music's along this artist like that. It kind of
yeah.
made sense in a while, marketing wise.
No, it does. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, Bob Thiel was that guy. He was into it, and I, I have to thank him too. For the idea.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, because we had our band. Actually, we had the Midnight Band at that time. And, what we wanted to do was to
Right.
bring our band in, and you can hear some of that music on. I think it's on Free Will, the remake or the remaster of Free Will. There are some songs at the end of it from when we did demos with our band then, which was called Black and Blues.
Oh, okay.
And well, it's good. It's very
Yeah.
good, but it's not Ron Carter and Bernard Purdy, and you
Right.
realize, yeah,
I'm thinking so much of the music you and Gil did together, so groundbreaking, and it basically similar topics with maybe different players playing the part today. And those songs, you could put it today and speaks the problems that are going on. The revolution will not be televised, the bottle and everything like that. Have you been noticing a lot of that? I'm sure, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
I have, and one of my biggest dreams was to get some of the younger artists
Mhm.
to who are aware of our music and aware and have claimed influence, um, having been influenced by what we did. What was my dream to always kind of see what it would be like,
Mhm.
if we were to get together and do some of that music, in context of today. And the album
Mm.
that is coming out later on this year is exactly that.
Oh,
It's
wow. Okay.
called
Can you maybe tip your hand, anybody, or you want to keep it quiet until
no, oh, no, I don't mind. I don't mind.
who are you collaborating with?
Well, one person that we were collaborating with is a great, fantastic singer from Washington D.C. named Raheem Devon.
Okay.
Raheem Devon is all
Yeah.
over it. But I guess the big news is that, which that in itself is big news. But the thing that many people will probably pay attention to the most is the fact that it was produced by Masters at Work, who haven't
Mm.
put out, uh, who haven't actually, I don't think they've done an album together, a whole album together in about 20 years or so. Masters at Work consists of Louis Vega and Kenny Dope, who people, um there people who know them know how deep their musical roots go, um and their how they've stretched in many different areas. But a lot of people think, oh, those guys, they're DJs, but they're actually producers as well as DJs.
Right.
Some of the remixes that they did just really, they got to me.
Mm.
The first one I heard was Louis Vega and Elements of Life did a remix of Superfly by
Mm.
Curtis Mayfield. And
Right.
if you listen to that, you know, you'll kind of understand where we're going with this album.
Yeah, that's awful exciting. I mean, you're out in Europe, but you think there's going to be some stuff out here in the U.S. You coming
Well, I
back
hope
for?
so. I mean, I did a show in San Francisco Jazz, in October, last
Okay.
October. I don't get as many calls from the U.S. as I do in Europe, which is one of the other reasons that I decided to move here, because I get so much of my work in Europe, and it costs so much to travel from the U.S.
Right.
that is another really good reason to be on this side. I've been able
Yeah.
to do a lot more things because I don't have to worry about that huge expense of getting back and forth from the U.S.
Yeah. I was looking at mutual friend Reggie Washington. He's out in Belgium, but
That's right.
he his wife sent me the tour schedule. He's got a project, and it's like, wow,
Mm.
this is busy. You can do a lot of stuff out there. I think you made a
You do a
great
lot.
move. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like you can be in uh you can be in 5 countries,
Uh,
um in the time that it takes just to go from New York to Atlanta, you know.
Wow. I just was
Yeah,
in Atlanta for a 3.5 hour layover going to Vegas. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah, no,
not
it's
fun. Yeah.
way more convenient, you know. And, you know, there's like a lot more happening in a more condensed form.
Right. Have you been over to New Morning Paris?
I have, yeah, I've been over there a couple of times actually.
Okay, yeah. Look, we had Patrice Rushen on about a month ago. Yeah,
He
she
was there.
played last year out there. Yeah, looks like a
Yeah,
fun place.
yeah, it is really. It's. I've seen Roy Ayers out there.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah, right.
I played with the last time I was there. I played with the flutist Ludivine Isenberg, and
Okay.
she's a great. You know, she's actually a great flautist, and we had a great time. I'll probably be going back soon. You know, so yeah,
Yeah.
no, I'm the Ronnie Scott's. I did Ronnie Scott's last
Oh yeah,
year.
London, right?
Yeah, yep.
Yeah,
I got a
yeah.
chance to play in Warsaw. Warsaw. I'll be going back to Warsaw pretty soon. Um, yeah, there's a lot of opportunities.
So
A
you've got
lot.
some dates, I believe, coming up in May, right? Three dates. What's
Yeah,
on
so
your
I'll be
website?
back in the UK,
Okay.
London, with Omar
Oh, okay.
and Masters of Work. Actually, we're going to kind of kick off the opening of the season of releases from the new album. The first
Oh,
one is
okay.
a song I wrote called "It's Your World," and it
Oh,
features Raheem Devon,
right.
and also not on the he won't be there at the show, but the actual track also includes the poet Jay Ivy, who did like
Oh, okay. Yeah.
some fantastic work on it.
It's funny you mentioned Omar. It was I don't know if you've run into him, Eric Shriz Roner. He's a saxophonist. He played with he's got his own band called the Horn Dogs, but he was on the show, and the night before he was with Omar at New Morning Paris. And he goes,
Yeah,
"Oh, sorry, I'm tired. I was on stage with Omar." And yeah, so
well, Omar can wear you out.
yeah, yeah, that's what
Omar's
I
got a
heard.
lot of energy.
Right, right, right. Yeah, you guys, I mean, a lot of connections. Everybody's helping each other out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. No, I'm a big fan of his,
yeah.
and my band that I work with over here,
Mhm.
the Omar's music director is actually my music director. So
Oh,
he's like
okay.
one of the busiest men in show business over here. But yeah, all my music's from UK.
Right. Yeah. So let's get back to the work with Gil. And you had a lot. I'm curious because with radio airplay, those
Mm.
records so dynamic and moving that what was the airplay specifically in the New York area? What kind of stations were playing the records?
Well, believe it or not, the first time we heard one of our songs on the radio was on Frankie Crocker's show.
He's my idol.
Oh yeah, well, whose
ESPLS.
idol isn't he?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
He's the man. Yeah.
he was the man. He was the man, and somehow he took a liking to the bottle, and he played that thing religiously, man. He played the
Wow.
bottle so much it was unbelievable, and it wasn't. We had no promotion, you know. We had no. I mean, this was a small musician-run label run
Right.
by Stanley Cowell and Charles Tolliver.
Mhm.
So the fact that he took this song and just kind of put it out there, was it was that was the beginning of our of our career.
Wow. Did you go over there to Inner City Broadcasting for some interviews?
I don't remember, but I'm sure,
Okay.
I don't think I ever met Frankie personally,
Okay.
but no, he was a huge factor
Yeah.
in breaking that song in the bottle, and that's just put us into another category, really.
I was this close to meeting. I saw Morris Day and the Time at Tramps, and Frankie
Oh,
was there. And as the
oh,
crowd was leaving, I'm running. I was up by the soundbar. I'm trying to rush up to him to thank him or whatever. He It was so packed. He got out the door. I never got a chance to meet him, but I sent him an email. He had been sick at the end, and he actually wrote back and said thanks
oh
and
man,
everything like that. So that was cool.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I sent messages to him. That's for sure. I said
right.
anybody knew that knew him, I always said, "Tell him thank you."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
He definitely made his mark in broadcasting out there. Yeah. Another super fan, well-known fan, and this is the big story. You guys played Saturday Night Live at the request of Richard Pryor. Tell us
Yes.
about that.
So Saturday Night Live hadn't been on but a few months, and they were looking for all the firepower they could get, comedic
Right.
firepower, and so they reached out to Richard Pryor.
Mhm.
We knew nothing about this, but we got a call, and Richard. It turns out that Richard Pryor wanted us to be the musical guest, because everybody in the tradition of Saturday Night Live from the beginning, the featured artist gets to choose the musical guest.
Wow.
Okay, and so his choice was Gil Scott-Heron, Brian Jackson. So um, he told them that, and they said, "Well, you have somebody else?"
Oh,
And he said, "No, that's it's going to be them."
uh,
And they were like kind of making noises like they didn't want to. I don't know why necessarily. Whether it was because you know Arista might have been more. Probably, my guess is that maybe Arista was more connected with CBS than it was, in Columbia than it was with NBC and whatever that label was, But
right.
that's my feeling. I mean, I didn't think it was like a political thing, but it could have been. Maybe they didn't want to ruffle any feathers, or maybe they didn't feel like we were well known enough. Maybe they wanted a more well known act.
Mhm.
But Richard Pryor knew about us, and
Right.
that's all that mattered to him,
Yeah.
because he wanted to. If people didn't know about us, he wanted to make sure they did. Um, and so he had to push back, and he said, "Well, no, that's who I want. You asked who my musical guest is, and that's who I want." And they kind of like, yeah, I don't know. They kind of waffled a little bit, and he said, "Well, look, this is easy." He said, "This is a piece of cake. And tell you what, you know, you don't want them on, you don't
Yeah.
get me. One
Yeah.
of the two.
Uh,
Make it, make a choice."
Make your choice.
So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that's how we got
Yeah.
on.
And you got a great spotlight on one of the tracks, playing the flute, right? That was great.
Well, not literally. No, I
Uh,
mean, I didn't actually. I played Mini Moog on one, and I
okay.
could tell that everything was kind of rushed because they didn't have spotlights on everybody. It's funny you mentioned the word spotlight, because
Yeah.
there was actually, for the whole, we did the song Johannesburg, in which I play a Mini Moog,
Mhm.
and I have it on top of my amp, um,
Okay.
and I'm standing behind Gil, and I actually didn't have a spotlight on me, so
I think
the
I'm
whole.
talking about another time I saw you perform.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Sorry, I confused it. Yeah.
That's okay, because on that particular show, I didn't have any spotlight on me for that whole song.
Okay.
Um, and Gil was playing the piano, so you didn't see me at all. So
Yeah.
I
It was
always
another. It
call
was
that
another
my
cut.
Man in the Shadows tour.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the
Man
next
in the
song, though,
Shadows.
I played Rhodes,
Yeah.
and so you finally saw me, and I guess everybody was like, well, "Who is this? Where'd he come from?"
Yeah. That's right. You gravitated towards the electric keyboards pretty well, but you were well prepared, right? As far as doubling that bass, and tell us about your first experience bringing that into your own music and Gil's music with the keyboard synthesizers.
Well, yeah, because at Lincoln University, we would rehearse in a church, in
Mhm.
the chapel, Mary Dodd Brown Chapel in at Lincoln University. No mics or anything like that. So you had better be able to sing loud or play loud, or or whatever. But unfortunately, the bass player, Leon Clark, he only had an acoustic bass. He didn't have an electric bass, so it never cut through. It never cut through. And sometimes, we didn't have a bassist at all. So I learned how to play like figured bass on my with my left hand, and
Okay.
it stuck, because there were so many times when I just needed to play the bass line,
Mhm.
and so I kind of became a proficient
Right.
at it, and it stood me in good stead at some point, because when I started playing the synthesizer later on at Tonto Studio,
Mhm.
um, I ended up doing a lot of the bass lines on albums like Bridges and 1980 and Secrets. Now, funny thing, I saw Ron Carter years later,
Okay.
and we were talking about some of the other subsequent albums, and I said to him, well, I'm kind of, like I was kind of almost apologizing, saying, well, yeah, I did end up playing some synth bass on, on some of those albums, man, and I said, but you got to understand, like I'm kind of like I've always been kind of like a frustrated bass player,
Uh-huh.
you know, and without a second delay, he goes, me too.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Which didn't make me feel any less guilty.
Yeah. So there it was. He had validation from one of your collaborators. Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah. You brought up the mini Moog and everything. We had I was thinking back, Bernie Worrell came into the studio and brought all his keyboards. And I always make a joke that was my biggest mistake in radio, that I didn't ask him to play more, because I think he only played like 2 minutes. He had his keyboard tech, he had everything,
Oh my
because
God.
Chris France and Tina Weymouth of the Talking Heads
Yeah,
were friends.
yeah.
They surprised him at the studio and we got to talking and everything, but
Oh,
couldn't have
man.
been a nicer guy, and was another heavy Moog guy.
Yeah, he was. He was, man.
Yeah.
He was just
Right.
incredible, man. Some of the things that he did, and you know, some of the changes that he came up with, the music changes, and yeah,
Were
I
you
mean,
guys ever able to meet, or just from afar?
briefly, yeah, we briefly met, but we never. I always wanted to just kind of sit there and just kind of soak up, what he knew, and just kind of pick his brain. But
Yeah.
we have the records. We have the
Yeah, I
records.
have the records, and I had him on the show like 5 or 6 times. So eventually I'll load him up there. Yeah.
Please.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely great. Let's go back to your leaving your partnership with Gil Scott-Heron that time. What went into your decision? And we could talk about, you work with some great other musicians in different fields. What was
Yeah.
your decision going into it?
So, the thing is that we our shows became very improvisationally heavy.
Mhm.
Very improvisation heavy. We had at one point we had Delbert Taylor on trumpet, who
Okay.
played with Fred Wesley, and we had Alan Barnes, who was a member of Blackbirds,
Okay.
had previously worked with one of the founding members of the Blackbirds, I believe. Um, we had a young bass player named Siggy Dillard. We
Okay.
had a drummer by the name of Tony Green, who I met when he was playing with Pharoah Sanders. We had an incredible band. It was just, there was so much music, and I was constantly learning more from playing with these guys. We had Barnett Williams. We used to call him Dr. Barnett Williams. He was a drumologist.
Oh yeah.
He was had founded in Washington D.C. something called the Society for the Preservation of African Percussion, and when that name was no joke. That
Right.
was really what he did, because when I first met him, he was in a room by himself. He was practicing. He had two mics on his drums, plugged into a Fender amp,
Mhm.
and I met him, and we started talking, and he started telling me, when I first walked in, he was playing this rhythm, and I thought, wow, that's great, man. What is that? And he started telling me the name of the rhythm, what part of Africa it was from, and at some point he started singing. He was playing, and he sang the song that went with the rhythm, and then he stopped playing, and he jumped up and he starts doing the dance that goes with the rhythm.
Wow.
So, I mean, he was an expert,
Yeah.
on all things African percussion, and I thought, man, I hope this guy would join our band if I ask him, and he did, and he just really kind of restructured the sound,
Mhm.
you know, of of the Midnight Band. I'll always be eternally grateful to him for that, Um, but what did you ask me? I
Now we
forgot
were
what
at
you asked.
about 1980, roughly, when you and Gil parted ways.
Oh yeah, so
Yeah.
the band had become something that was, I don't know, it was a lot of fun for me.
Mhm.
But I did notice that Gil spent a lot of time playing tambourine, you know,
Oh, okay.
and
So it was a lot on your shoulders.
I thought, well, not so much that. I mean, it didn't feel very heavy to me,
Okay.
but it seemed like he was spending a lot of time, kind of being there, and not. I know he was enjoying it, but he said something to me at one point, where he said something like it wasn't the band was kind of moving away from. He said, I'm a blues singer, you know. I sing I sing simple songs, and it just kind of made me feel that he was not happy, being where he was in the band,
Okay.
and I thought, well, this is both of our bands, it's
Yeah.
not my band, you know, and so I felt bad, I felt bad, and I kind of took a step back, you know, and when I did, I realized that there was a lot more, there were a lot of other things that were going on that maybe I wasn't even aware of,
Mhm.
but the vibe was different, it started being a little different, and at one point I found out I was on a break, and I found out that actually the Gil had taken the band to a gig without telling me, you
Oh,
know. And I thought, well, okay, well, the writing's on the wall now, so
yeah.
yeah. I mean, far be it from me to crash a party, So I kind of made my exit, at that point. I had a lot of musical ideas.
Mhm.
It wasn't the right time for it,
Right.
because I had gone to about 15 labels,
Okay.
and they all turned me down. Um, and so eventually I said, okay, I probably need to get like a job, so
Yeah.
I can eat.
Yeah.
And it just so happened that I really like computers, and I got
Okay.
a job
Okay.
in the city of New York, and kind of worked my way into kind of tunneled my way into the IT department, and I learned how to program, which it was fun. It was fun for me, it was a challenge for me, and I always liked a challenge. So yeah, but in the end, I ended up doing that for like 35 years, and
It was the city of New York, right?
city
The
of New York,
government? Yeah, right.
city of New York, for the children's services.
Okay. Where was the office based?
Oh,
What
the
part of
office was in the in the financial district. It was
Oh,
on
okay.
William Street,
Oh, okay.
right there by the seaport.
So you could take the subway right over?
To subway, man. You can take the subway anywhere. You know
Yeah, I
that.
know. I used to ride the 6 line all the time. Yeah.
The six, yeah,
Yeah, the
I've heard
6.
from the six was close to there. And when
Yeah.
I ended up living in Dittman's Park, you
Okay.
know, I would, I'd have to take a few a few different trains.
Right.
I would take the R train, or whatever. I forget what it. No, the was it the R, the D.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, which I had been totally unfamiliar with. I wasn't even over on that side. I used to be on the A train side, the A
Mm.
train side,
Y
and
Right.
what have you, C train. So I
So you
learned a lot more about the subways.
Yeah, yeah. Very complex and historic, system, and, I wanted to, discuss a bit because your studio work with, a few of my favorite bands, Kool and the Gang,
Oh wow, yeah,
Gwen Guthrie.
yeah.
I think I was born in Orange, New Jersey. I think
Oh
she was
yeah,
from Orange, right?
she lived in Orange. Yeah,
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 yeah. So, yeah, I saw
that's right.
and Kool and the Gang, of course, got Jersey roots. How did you become affiliated with, those great artists?
Well, in after it was about 1981 or so. You know, I had some friends over in Jersey, and they happened to be friends with Cool
Mhm.
and Ronald. Um, and so she kind of asked him about did they need a keyboard. It was a time when they were kind of going through some transitions,
Okay.
and they needed a keyboard player for the session they were doing called Something Special.
Mhm.
That was the album,
Right.
and I was around,
Alright.
and they knew who I was, and so they said, yeah, man, you want to come down and and do something on this session, and they were recording in Jersey City, in Orange, East Orange,
Okay.
at the House of Music. You might be familiar with that place,
I heard
and
it, yeah.
I had been there a few times before, so I already knew about the place, um, but I had no way to get there. I didn't have a car, you
Okay.
know, and so they said, well, we'll pick you up. So at this time I'm staying with my parents because I'm not dead broke,
Right.
30s and really feeling kind of dejected.
Right.
But
We've all been
so
there.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm there, and my mom says, "Oh, your car's here." I think it's your car.
Uh-huh.
I said, well, okay. So, and I go, I look out the window, and
Uh-huh.
it's a big black limousine.
Wow.
You know, so they pick me up and take me to the studio,
Yeah.
and that went on for a couple of weeks. You know,
Well, what songs on Something Special did you work on?
I worked on. I played a little bit on Celebrate
Oh, okay.
and Celebration, and then I also worked on Pass It On.
Yeah.
That was one of the tracks on there. Was another one too. Get Down on It. Yeah, I worked on both of those. I worked on all three of those.
Yeah, not
Because
really good songs. No, I'm kidding. I got the album right there. I love Kool and the Gang. Yeah.
that was one of the highlights. It was one of the highlights of my life.
Yeah. Hall of
And
Famers. Yeah.
Hall of Famers. Yeah, but I also went on the road with Phyllis Hyman.
Oh,
I
wow.
really
Yeah.
enjoyed that. That was really incredible with Tom Barney playing bass and John Seswell on drums. Myra Casales was playing percussion.
Mm,
Marcus Miller's cousin Ronnie.
okay.
Ronnie Miller was playing guitar, and then of course Phyllis. She was just
Yeah.
amazing, and she really had no idea how good she really was.
She was from Philly, right? I think.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
think so.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And other artists passed unfortunately too soon. Yeah. Yeah.
No, no.
Really sad
And I also
story.
worked with Bobby Humphrey, you
Oh,
know,
yeah.
uh,
On the flute.
which
Yeah.
my buddy. Yeah. So yeah, we did some things together. And that band was James Calloway. James
Oh,
Calloway, the bassist in
right.
Black Ivory.
Yeah. I'll ask particularly about the flute. Did you ever try saxophone as far as
I did
working it?
try saxophone. You
Uh-huh.
you leading me, man. That's a leading question.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because it's always the other way around, saxophonist, and then they
Yeah,
gravitate towards a flute. But I was really interested in your
it would have
relationship.
been. It would
Okay.
have been, but what happened was I went to a pawn shop and I got this alto sax because I mean I
Okay.
really wanted to play tenor, but tenors
Right.
cost way more than altos. So I'm in the pawn shop. I get this alto, and in the box, in the case is a strap. It's basically like a rope. You put it on,
Mhm.
and it's got a hook on it. You hang your sax on it. So I'm playing. I'm practicing. I mean, like I'm practicing all the time. I mean, I'm playing this thing nonstop, driving everybody nuts. I
Right.
even took it to school. You know,
Right.
um, and I would play during lunch hour and everything. I was weird, man. I was a weirdo. I would stand in the bushes of
Oh,
the outside of the school, and I would just play my heart out.
right.
You know, one day I went to reach for something and I couldn't raise my arm. And as hard as I tried, I couldn't raise my arm any higher than this. And it didn't go away. So I finally went to a doctor,
Mhm.
and the doctor examined me and he said, "Well, young man, it looks like you've severed your suprascapular nerve. So it's a nerve here somewhere,
Oh, wow.
okay,
Yeah.
or near the neck, you
Mhm.
know." And so I said, "Well, how does that happen?" And he says, "Well, a lot of times, people will hang heavy things on their neck, it kind of severs the nerve right there, so you can't raise your arm."
Right.
I said, "Well, will it heal?" He said, "Yeah, possibly, we'll see." And I said, "Well, what do I have to do?" And he says, "Well, stop hanging things around your neck." So that
Wow.
was it.
That's yeah.
That was it for my set. But I had really gotten into the fingering and everything. I just liked the way it felt, to play the saxophone. I was
Right,
I was
right.
getting good at it.
Uh-huh.
And I said, "Well, I didn't want to lose this muscle memory."
Right.
So I got a flute. I got a flute because
Right.
you don't have to hang a flute around your neck,
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was still pretty much the same kind of fingering, more or
You would have
less.
you would have been finished with a baritone, right?
Oh man, forget
That would
about
have
it.
really
And
gotten
that
it.
was before they had the harnesses. So
Oh, yeah, yeah, right. Yeah.
now nobody hangs a sax around their neck anymore. Now they have the harnesses, they go on your shoulder, and
Right. Yeah, clips and everything.
what did I know?
Yeah.
I was
That's a
17.
really cool story. Not that you had to go through that, but
Well, no,
yeah.
but yeah, it is. I mean, because otherwise, I think I probably would have been. Maybe I would have been. Maybe I would have played the sax on the bottle.
Yeah, yeah.
And that would have been maybe not as interesting,
It would have been a different career path possibly or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah,
possibly.
a little. Yeah.
So, when I went to England, it doesn't. People wouldn't say, "Oh, Brian Jackson on flute." It's I used to introduce myself to people in London years ago in the UK, and I used
Right.
to say, "I'm Brian Jackson," and how you doing? I'm
Mhm.
saying, I worked with Gil Scott-Heron, and they would go, "Oh, Brian Jackson on flute." So now, so I
Yeah.
guess it would be, "Oh, Brian Jackson on sax."
Right, right.
So it doesn't sound as good,
No, no, it flows better with the flute.
Yeah.
Which of the two instruments, keys and flute, do you practice more rehearsal wise?
Oh, you know what? I joined an amateur jazz band here in my town where I
Okay.
live, specifically so that I could, because I'm reading jazz charts now.
Mhm.
I'm playing jazz charts. Um, so with the
Okay.
flute. So, I got some books back here, where I'm studying
Yeah.
to try to get my flute stuff back together, my embouchure and, just getting my dexterity back because I really have never considered myself a flautist.
Okay.
Never really thought of myself as a flautist. But now I have to consider myself a flautist because I'm in this band and they expect me to, to
Yeah.
know these parts.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
yeah, so
They're
I'm
expecting
working on
big
that.
things from you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I'm
Yeah.
trying. I'm working on it.
Do you in a group like that, do you let them know your past history or you just go in?
Well, my mother-in-law told him,
Huh?
She was like, oh yeah, he's on his way to London, and he'll
Uh-huh.
be there in a few. I'm like, still, you know, still, but no, they all know now. So, oh, when you going on tour again?
Right,
So
right.
there's no way around
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe some guest spots for the younger musicians somebody may stand out, right? Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
which there's the only young musician in that band is the conductor. 'Cause It's
Oh,
all
okay.
it's all it's all old people like me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then we have, so like the highlight of the rehearsals usually is that like every few weeks we get to do an aperitif afterwards, and so the
Oh,
wine
okay.
comes out and the cheese and and the
Wow.
quiche and
Yeah. You're
everybody
living
looks
the good
forward to
life.
that.
The bon
Yeah, no,
vie, right? Yeah.
for real, Bobby.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, hey, listen, before we let you go, remind our watchers, viewers, and listeners, brianjackson.net. Look for the dates. He's got, I think, 3 dates in the UK. He'd
That's
probably
right.
be adding more all over Europe. And
Yeah, yeah.
remind people of the two latest records, the one that just came out, and also something down in the fall. What are the
Oh,
titles people should be looking for?
okay, so the titles of the albums are Of Corners and Bridges. It's a tribute to, it features Milton Nascimento on one track, and it's a tribute to him. We do all of his some of his most loved songs. Um, and the artists that I worked with on this are basically musicians that he came up with, that he recorded with way back then. Uh, People like Nivaldo Ornelas and Paulo Santos, Paulinho Santos, and Robertinho Silva, and Alberto Continentino, who is the fantastic bassist, and Lula Galvao. So many. It also has Mamao Ivan Conti, the drummer and the founder you know, of the band. What am I trying to say?
Yeah, I'm impressed you can just recall all the musicians on the record. That's pretty impressive. Yeah.
except for the band that Mamao comes from. Oh my God.
We're gonna put a picture of it right up there. Yeah.
Wait a minute, man. Oh,
Yeah.
this is crazy, man. Why would I forget? Why would I forget this? What is some of the greatest? It's one of the greatest Brazilian bands. In
Don't worry, we can edit it out. Take your time.
Azimuth, Azimuth. Yeah.
Okay.
So, and it also features it's got the late great Ivan Mamao Conti,
Okay.
who was one of the co-founders of the great Brazilian jazz band Azimuth, uh, and so much more good stuff. Georgia Ann Muldrow came in to to do a track, and so I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud of it. So that's one. It's called "Of Corners and Bridges."
Okay.
The next one will be released, I think, maybe around September or October,
Okay.
and it's called "Now More Than Ever," produced by Louis Vega and Kenny Dope, otherwise known as Masters at Work. Um, Something I'm also extremely proud of. It features the music and some of the catalog of Gil Scott-Heron and me, Brian Jackson, um, and we've got a lineup of great artists like Rasan Patterson singing, Lisa Fisher. Um, we've got Moody Man. We've got Jay Ivy doing some work on it. There's also Josh Milan, uh, Luis Quintana, Luis Quintero, Axel Tosca. Um, just the incredible musicians. We have Black Thought, who is actually
Oh,
doing a
okay.
track on it as well.
Wow. So you
So yeah, we're looking forward to that. And the first single, I think we're going to drop it next month, and it's a song that I wrote for an album called "It's Your World" that we released. Gil and I released in 1976.
wow.
Um,
So the Master Works Louis Vega put a little spin on that one too, right?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
they're good. They're good for spin, man. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that some of the arrangements are really I really enjoy some of the arrangements that they did. And oh, cannot forget
Mhm.
one of the best parts of that album are the arrangements by Leroy Burgess.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So
Black Ivory as well.
right,
So
right.
yeah, we yeah, we're looking forward to that coming out, and
Wow.
we're very happy with that.
So this is going to be a busy 2025 for you. You
Yes,
recently moved. A
yes.
lot of people, you moved to another part of the world, but you're still doing great compositions, and you keep an open mind to all different, different flavors of music, which is cool.
Yeah, well, I'm a student of of all music that that comes from the African diaspora. You know what I mean? I try to keep up with the tradition, because that's kind of where I come from. That's where I learned what I learned, and so
Mhm.
it's my job to pass it on.
Yeah. Hey, Brian, it's been great talking with you, Brian Jackson. Yeah. True,
It's a
true
pleasure,
honor for
Joe.
me. Yeah.
Oh, man, thank you, and me as well, You've been
Yeah.
doing this a long time, man, and
Yeah. Not as long as you, but we're close in the same generation. So,
yeah, yeah,
but yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So thanks,
It's a
Brian
pleasure.
Jackson, and go get Brian's music, and we'll keep you up to date on the current projects as well.
Thank you,
Thanks, Brian.
Joe.
All
Thanks a
right.
lot, man.
Peace.
Peace.